Today's video is all about the Bark River Cub EDC. It's the most expensive knife I've ever purchased at $300 and some change. I have never spent this much on a knife before. It's a super steel, so this is CPM 3V, and that's a steel I've never used before. I've never used a so-called super steel before. I've been more or less just a traditionalist buck knife kind of buck 110 kind of guy, you know, and part of that's just because I can't afford knives like this. I had to save for a while, and really it's this YouTube channel that allowed me to purchase this knife, and I felt that I owed it to my viewers and to myself to try new things, explore new knives and new areas in the knife world that I hadn't explored before. So I landed on the Bark River Cub EDC, and you can see the specifications in the description below, as well as a link to DLT Trading where I purchased this knife. So let's get into it. First impressions when I opened the box, out of the box, this knife, it's just beautiful. It really is. It has a gorgeous desert ironwood handle. I went with brass pins, and I was just surprised right away at how it overall just has a very solid, very put together, balanced, beautiful look to the knife. The geometry is nice. Okay, the grind on the edge is very nice. There's no secondary bevel. It is a convex grind all the way to the apex of the cutting edge, and it's just as near to perfect as any knife I've ever had. So I was really impressed with that right away. Right out of the box, this knife was really sharp. Using the paper test that seems to be ubiquitous on YouTube to judge sharpness, I felt it was very sharp. The other thing that surprised me was just the very poor construction of the sheath. And I know that I may be biased because I'm a leather worker and I build sheaths, but I really think that if you're going to charge $300 for a knife, that you should have a sheath that is somewhat presentable and workable with that knife that you're buying. Here's a quick side-by-side with a buck 113, which is sort of the hunting knife that I used before for most of my hunting trips. But now that we have the Cub EDC, it's time to take it up in the mountains on a hunting trip and see what tests we can put it through. So up into the Bighorn Mountains, I traveled to find elk with my dad and my brother-in-law. Right away after we got to camp and started scouting around, we saw a cow and her calf in a good position to sneak up on. So we put the sneak on this cow and calf and got really close, but we were not quite able to close the deal before sunset. So back to camp we went. I had the opportunity to try my knife out on some frozen, or at least partially frozen, antelope backstraps, some tomatoes, and let me tell you, this thing is a great slicer. It is razor sharp out of the box, and it sliced through the tomato like it was nothing, the frozen meat like it was nothing, and it was just a pleasure to use right away. So the next morning, getting ready to go, tried to put my belt through horizontally on this knife sheath, and it just doesn't go very well. And even when it gets on there, it's really out of balance. So I just had to go vertically to carry my knife on this trip. And by the end of the trip, honestly, it was okay. I didn't mind the sheath after using it for a few days, as long as you're okay with just vertical carry. This sheath was my companion through some hiking, lots of glassing, taking in the beautiful sights and sounds of the mountains. And I loved having it with me. It just felt good having this knife. It felt like a very formidable tool that I knew I would be able to work through any situation in which I found myself. And that's a good feeling to have when you're in the mountains. We saw some amazing sights, even got really close to another calf elk, but just couldn't quite get the right situation with the right animal, and nobody ended up filling their tag on this trip. This knife was a pleasure to use around the dinner table. There was no task that could phase it in any way whatsoever when you're eating and doing chores around camp, including carving sticks, cutting the tiniest strawberry I've ever seen, cutting bank line, and other really important camp tasks for knives. This knife excelled in every way. So finally the time came to head back down the mountain, get back to my daily life. And that's one of the reasons I chose this knife, is because I knew I didn't have to just carry it in the mountains. It's about the right size that you can carry on a regular basis. But to do that, I knew I needed another sheath. So I didn't waste any time. I got right into building a sheath for this knife. I decided to go with the Ulti Clip for this knife sheath because I wanted a way to carry it discreetly at work, mostly. As cool as I think it is, there's just times where you don't want a big fixed blade on your belt or hanging around your neck or whatever it is. And to me, the Ulti Clip seemed like a pretty good solution, at least for the pants that I wear. It fits really well in the pocket, and the clip is very discreet but very secure. And it's really easy to just draw this knife out and slide it back into the sheath in your pocket without drawing too much attention to yourself. So I really appreciated that. And I really liked this Ulti Clip. It's the first time I've tried it. So tell me what you guys think about this, if you've tried it out before. But I also wanted to be able to carry it horizontally on my belt or on my pack, whatever situation I may find myself in. So of course I made a leather loop that could screw into the same grommets, for which I use the Ulti Clip. I carried and used this knife daily for a week or so, using it for daily mundane tasks that you might find yourself using a knife for, and I really liked it. It is a pleasure to carry and feels good in every situation to me. I even tried some feather sticking, and I'm not normally a feather sticking guy. It's not something I have done on a regular basis in the past to start fires. And I realize it might be because of the knives that I've carried in the past, because this was really a pleasure to feather stick with, and it worked so easily. And I was able to start a fire really quickly. So that may be something I do more of in the future, and maybe it's just a new part of my knife journey that I have not yet really embarked on. That didn't make any sense. Maybe it's just a new part of my knife journey. Some of you guys are there already. I'm catching up. The same could be said about the convex edge on this knife. I've never had a true convex edge like this, or at least one that's convex, you know, almost all the way from the spine to the cutting edge of this knife. And sharpening that, I was worried about sharpening that. After a weekend in the mountains and a week or week and a half of use, I tested the sharpness of the CPM 3V on this knife, and it still retained a very sharp edge, although maybe not quite as good as it was from the factory. So I ordered some Bark River compound from DLT and tried my hand at stropping to sharpen this knife, following the instructions from Bark River, and it worked pretty well. But you can see I probably used too aggressive of an angle, and I'm still learning how to sharpen knives with compound on a strop. In the past, I've used a strop mostly just to finish a sharpening job that I've already done, and I don't put any compound on the leather. I'm just trying to straighten out the burr is all I'm doing. I'm not trying to remove any metal. So this was a little different for me, but I think I'm learning and getting better, and I was able to get it fairly sharp to the point where I could cut paper easily and shave the hair on my arms without too much of a problem. And I think I'll continue to get better at that in the future. So let me give you my final impressions of this knife. It's a miracle I still have battery. First, the positives. I still love the profile. The handle is exceptionally comfortable. The desert ironwood seems to be extremely durable. There's not a scratch on it. I just really love the feel of this knife in the hand, and something about knowing how it feels and knowing that it's extremely sharp and that it will hold its edge for quite a long time makes carrying it feel really good. It just feels like I can do anything with this knife, and that's a good feeling. Some things that I would change about this design, and I say this knowing that it will probably make no difference, and it's just me, but the edges of the handle, especially on the top near the blade and at the very butt, the edges are completely 90-degree or more acute than that even. They're just sharp. I don't know why you would put edges that sharp on a wooden handle. It just doesn't seem like a wise idea, and I worry that that's going to cause some breaking on that edge in the future. I don't know. It hasn't so far, but I'd feel better if it was more rounded. You know what I mean? But overall, I'm really happy with this knife, and I know I didn't slam it into any cars or barrels or shoot it with a gun or anything like that. So maybe I don't know anything about how good this steel is, but I can tell you for everyday living in rural Western America and for in the mountains, this knife is a pleasure to use and carry, and I think that the steel is excellent. And I can say that because I have used lots of buck knives with the 420HC steel, and I know it's not the best. It does get dull fast, and it does scratch easy, and this doesn't. So I get that. Was it worth $300? Yeah, I think so. I really like it, and I think it will last me and my children and my grandchildren for a very long time if it's well cared for. I would spend the money again. I would buy more Bark River knives. I really like their Bushcrafter model. I really liked the Fox River model. I would buy dozens of them, but I can't afford it.